Okay, so recording is live. So welcome to the Tourism Product Development Training session, and glad you could join me here today. And there's a few things we want to achieve today. We will have a presentation to kind of kick things off around tourism product development and specifically package development, because it's relevant to not only your tourism strategy, but I think it plays to some of your assets. But what we want to do here is not only sort of have a static training session, but also to ensure that we have a bit of a workshop. So there's going to be some two-way discussion around what could happen in McBride around tourism product development and package development. So the first kind of 20 to 30 minutes will be a presentation, and then the last 20 to 30 minutes we'll have a discussion about what the potential might be for product development in the McBride region. So sound good to everybody? Great, I'm seeing head shake, so that's good. Anybody want to add a whole bunch to the agenda, or no, we're good? Okay, I'm going to share my screen here. So you should be able to see the presentation at this point. If you can't, then wave your hands wildly. No, okay, we're good. So in terms of the overview of the session, we will take a few minutes here and review some principles around product and package development, and also describe a proposed package that for McBride, and this was the original idea, came out of the master plan process. And so we'll flesh that out a little bit more and discuss it. We also have Expedition Management Consulting has a logistical planning template that we have established. And so we'll talk about some of the points on that logistical planning, because logistics is such an important part of package and product development, and then to discuss next steps for McBride. So the overview of the session, the objective of the session is to provide participants information on tourism product and package development and begin to move McBride towards developing new and exciting visitor experiences that will excite and attract visitors. So it's really that kind of moving towards getting more experiences in the ground. So what is tourism product? And you will see various definitions of this. Some definitions are quite broad and include all kinds of things. For this, we're kind of focusing in a little bit more on those things that attract visitors. So any activity, attraction, product, or experience that attracts visitors, or could be further developed to attract visitors. So whether that be an outdoor experience, or a shopping, or an accommodation that might attract visitors, or any other sort of activity or attraction. We know that there's stages of tourism product development, and if you go on the Destination BC website, you'll see some more information on these stages, all the way from undeveloped, so that has low market reach. So this might be an asset in the community that locals might go to. It might be a trail or an undeveloped area that has fairly low visitor reach. Mostly potentially locals, or those visitors that are invited by locals might partake in that particular activity. Then you could go further along the continuum to partially developed activities that aren't widely known, but have some awareness among visitors. Visitor and market ready, where you're actually selling the experience out in the open market, and you can advertise that and promote that and generate interest with that particular tourism experience. And then export ready, those experiences that could be packaged and sold internationally, and can be developed and marketed internationally. So if you remember from the presentation, we just described the tourism master plan actually identified the four main sort of areas for product development: nature-based and outdoor experiences, of course, culinary tourism or cultural tourism, including festivals and events, agritourism and culinary experiences, and visiting friends and relatives tourism. We did note that the tourism products are, at the present time, there is a lack of visitor and market-ready tourism products and a lack of related programming and experiences. And that's why this session is on the forum agenda. So what is a tourism package? Well, it's linking several individual products into a single experience, typically for a single price. So it could include food and beverage options, accommodation, built attractions like museums and art galleries, natural attractions. Of course, transportation needs to be part of this, programming, whether there's guided tours, entertainments, festivals that could be part of a package, shopping and activities, and then obviously ability to experience local culture. So it could be any combination of these types of experiences put into a single activity for a single price. Why would you look at developing packages? Well, it comes down to resources and assets. And you have some excellent assets in the region, and you have varying levels of product available to the market. And rather than starting from scratch, you can take some of those assets and some of those experiences that currently are offered, put them together and create a new and exciting package and a new exciting product for visitors. It's an effective and efficient way to utilize those existing assets, and it can create customer value by combining those existing products into new packages. So there are, what we thought we'd do here is provide a few examples of packages that are currently offered in similar destinations. When we look at this, it could be anywhere from sort of single day or even half day packages to itineraries and driving tours that could be single day, multi-day, or multi-day packages with all-inclusive prices, and everything would be on the other end of the continuum. I'll just need to share. I just want to share my screen here. So you should be able to see snowmobilers. Can you see that? Good. So this is an example of at a Golden, a single day tour for snowmobiling, and they've got different options. They've got half day options and various snowmobile tours for experience levels, twilight rides. So this is an example, and I know you have this in the region as well, single day type of tour. Tumbler Ridge has been doing some interesting stuff around tourism and packaging, and they are actually part of an upcoming session here today, the success story session. They have this driving tour. You can see how it's described with some mapping, the various stops and of each destination, description of each destination, some imagery to support each stop. So this is an example of something that could be fairly easily done in the McBride region to a greater degree. And so I'm just clicking through here and showing each one of these. And then if we look at a little bit more of an extensive tour or package that could be developed, we look to BC Ferries example here with Haida Gwaii all-inclusive cultural package. And here you can see there's some good imagery to support this. It's a 4-night excursion with return ferry, all meals, cultural tours for a pretty good price there, over $2,200 plus taxes and fees for this 4-day tour. Includes some really interesting activities, 4 nights at the Haida House, return ferry from Prince Rupert, all meals, and a Haida feast, a traditional Haida feast. private tours of local cultural facilities, a Zodiac trip, and then some choice to customize it around the history tour, or weaving, or other hands-on type activities, or kayaking and others. So this describes pretty clearly each of the stops on the tour and on the package, and provides some good imagery and stories to back up each stop to kind of present this to receptive markets. There's also an opportunity to enhance the journey with inside or outdoor cabins. Also, they're taking the opportunity here to do some visitor counseling. So if you, as a visitor, wanted to see a pre and post trip on top of this, you could contact them and discuss what the options might be for that. So we just provide those here to provide an example or several examples of things that could happen and are happening in other destinations. Okay, so we should have the presentation back here again. It's kind of kicked me back to the beginning, but here we'll go. Good, we should be back on line here in terms of the presentation. So if you're part of this morning's session, we did show this slide, but we want to kind of switch the focus here towards McBride and what the competitive advantage of McBride is, what the target markets are, and then also a suggestion for a potential package and tour in the future. So again, McBride's competitive advantage. What makes the McBride region unique is that it offers a combination of uncrowded wilderness, proximity to iconic attractions, and authentic local history. When those three things, the uncrowded wilderness, authentic history, and iconic attractions intersect, that's where there's true value in the McBride region, and something that's special that you can offer. And this slide we also described this morning in terms of the target markets. Overnight visitors from British Columbia and Alberta are the biggest volume currently. And so working off of those visitors that are already coming to the destination, stopover visitors that are coming through, and so in some cases stopping really quickly, would like to extend their stays and enhance their experience. International visitors, we heard from stakeholders and saw in the data that there's a strong niche there in those international visitors that are looking for off the beaten track sort of experiences and want to explore what's going on in the region. And then visiting friends and relatives looking to connect with their hosts. Again, a really strong, consistent market to work from. In the master plan, we described 4 different product areas within the broader product areas. And the first was a travel through time package. The second was explore the ancient forest. The third, experience the frontier on Main Street, McBride. And also in number 4, sled the backcountry McBride. So those 4 kind of product areas in the appendices of the master plan, if you haven't had an opportunity to review, they're there and described. We're going to spend a few minutes here and talk specifically about the travel through time package and in a little bit more detail. So this package would take visitors on a journey through multiple time periods within the McBride region, and could begin with a guided trip to the ancient forest. And this morning we talked about the ancient forest and what a magical place it is. Here, visitors would learn about the park and be amazed by the old growth forest, and of course the trees standing for over 1,000 years. Is a humbling experience, and experiencing such majesty will give visitors appreciation for deep time, far beyond the time scales that humans are accustomed to. And we certainly experienced that when we visited. It really makes you stop and think as a visitor into the region. It connects you to the natural history. Combined with that natural history experience, you could certainly add on a cultural programming to learn about the history of the local Indigenous peoples, and the links to the ancient forest. So that could be sort of whichever time period you wanted to choose, but the theme here is traveling through time. So we're going way back to in this forest that's thousands of years old, and then to indigenous history, and transferring that in or through. From there, visitors would be transported hundreds of years into the future with a visit to McBride's Heritage Railway Station and Main Street. So you're kind of physically moving from one location physically, but then emotionally you're kind of transferring over to the train station and everything downtown Village McBride. Interpretation and storytelling would connect visitors to the community's past as a frontier town on the Grand Trunk Pacific Railway. Area-appropriate activities would entertain visitors while lunch is prepared and served at a nearby cafe or restaurant. Of course, engaging multiple stakeholders in this package would be so important to its success and really highlighting the community's attributes. Accommodation, dinner, evening activity options could be readily built into the package to drive overnight visitation. So the limit, there's really no limit to what could be added here to extend. You could stick with a half day, a 3/4 day, or a full day, or you could make it an overnight accommodation, which of course would really drive towards your primary market of trying to drive overnight visitation. You could add a train ride from or into Jasper to enhance the experience, and I know that has happened in the past to varying levels of success, but it certainly would be a possibility. And many more opportunities for customization can present themselves depending on the stakeholders who become involved, and of course, market demand. So that gives sort of a morsel of some initial thoughts around what could potentially happen in McBride. And we presented that so we could have a starting point for discussion today. I will continue on with the presentation here to describe a little bit more about how this might happen and some tools that you could employ when developing a package. So the important thing here with package development is partnership and collaboration. That's really how these things come to light, and how they're successful is bringing together multiple tourism experiences under one banner. Getting together either in a room or virtually to dream about what would be possible and what excites you as a community to be able to tell your story to visitors across the world. Now, often we find with clients a focus on what the community wants to provide versus what there is market demand for. So we really want to seek that product market match. What is it that is unique and valuable that you want to offer that people will actually pay for out there in the market? So that product market match is really important. We would suggest that you start focusing on one package to start. It can be challenging to do. And if you get too many irons in the fire, it can be difficult. So we would suggest you focus on one. Then planning is such a critical part, and we'll talk about that in subsequent slides here as to what would need to happen. Execution and evaluation are, of course, important parts of this. When we look across the tourism industry, we look for best practices in planning successful packages. And really, it's about providing that distinct customer benefit. Why would a visitor want to purchase a package or an experience from your destination when they have other places that they could spend their discretionary income on? What is it that's unique and valuable? It's really important also to link the product to your broader brand. And so you can leverage year-round promotions, leverage the actual package or product that you're developing, and leverage the broader destination marketing efforts. It has to be well planned and coordinated, especially if you're doing package development. There's multiple stakeholders. That's such an important part of it. Promoting a compelling message, and we look at some of that Haida Gwaii imagery in the example they provided earlier around some of the reasons you might want to partake in that particular package. That one for me, I mean, I guess I'm probably in their target market, but that particular package got me excited in terms of what they were offering, and it was compelling. It was a compelling offering consistent quality, so making sure that those experiences that you're providing are really moments that people will remember for a long time and will share with their friends and family. Measuring success so you can build upon that success, sharing those success stories with visitors, whether it be social media or other, and evaluating that with your stakeholders. This is sometimes clients like to kind of see a chart in terms of how you might go about this. Determining your package components, of course, is a really important part. Focusing on the value, that customer value we talked about, but also balancing that with profitability. Naming and pricing the package, planning all the logistics, which we'll talk about in a second here. Testing the package with a sort of test market before you launch. Promoting and marketing that package or product development, and then also evaluating. As mentioned, we do have a template for logistical planning, and especially for package development, there are quite a few considerations and that sort of need to be considered at the outset. The first thing being availability, and this can mean a lot of different things, but are you looking to drive visitation in certain segments of the season, or certain seasons rather, certain parts of the calendar year? Do your partners have availability in the off season? Like some really important questions around availability, not only of visitors, but also of operators. The operational capacity question is also really important. Often we find that clients might get really excited about a certain offering, but not necessarily have the capacity to deliver on that. So it's how are you going to grow that capacity or alter what you're doing to be able to add an additional experience. That product experience offering needs to be really clearly outlined, and that message needs to be shared. So there's some questions that we ask in our template around that. Scheduling, really important, especially with multiple stakeholders. How are you going to schedule these things so that they're really seamless? Safety, and especially if we're working with different organizations on one particular product that's being offered, different organizations will have different safety regulations and processes to go in. So that needs to be harmonized. The transportation links, how that's going to be dealt with, whether that's going to be part of the package or whether it's going to be a sort of a U-Drive option. What accommodations will be offered in the package if accommodations are offered. We find that accommodations often are central to some of these. They can also provide some administration. That's one thing that sometimes gets overlooked for communities that are new to package development. How is the package going to be administered? Who's going to promote it? Who's going to communicate with the visitors? Who's going to take the registrations, the money, distribute the money, all of that stuff. So sometimes that lands to the accommodation providers. It's the logical place. Other times there's an attraction or another body, a DMO, that would take on that administrative function as well as communication. Insurance and liability is a concern in today's world, no matter what you're doing. So that there's a section of the template around insurance and liability. And all of this, making sure it's a seamless experience for the visitor. And so the template describes some of the ways that you can do that, and then offers some suggestions. So the next steps then, we do believe McBride has the assets in place to take the next steps in its product development journey. It certainly, I think, is an exciting time in the community, and there's opportunity with the assets that you have in place right now to collaborate and bring some of those visitor experiences to market. and make sure there's some sound planning and excellent execution to do that. So with that, I'll open it up if anyone has any questions about what I just presented. After that, I do have some questions for you, so we can have an open discussion about what is possible for McBride and get some ideas on the table. But any questions at all on the presentation?
It's Eileen here. I just have a question. When you talk about experience and opportunities, and you had snowmobiling there, which is just a winter sport, so that's one thing. But the other thing I was wondering is there's a lot of people that come from the east on that highway and then head down south. They don't come through this area. And when we're talking about traveling through time, I mean, if we look at the history of Robson Park, for instance, there's incredible history there. And if we can add that into a time thing so we can bring people with the opportunity to head west instead of south when they come to the junction, I think is really important. Yeah, and so that's, and the other thing I was going to mention is the history of the hunting and the trapping here is quite big, and I think there's a way to bring. There's a lot of little trapping cabins all over the place. You could take somebody on a very short hike to one of them, that sort of thing as well.
Thank you, Eileen.
Thank you.
This is Danielle. I have my hand up, and if you don't mind me breaking in.
Yes, please, Danielle, and then we've got April after that.
Okay, sorry about this. No, I just wanted to say, you know, we've looked at package development before, and I just wanted to share some of the challenges that we faced and see if there are some workarounds for them through your experience.
Sure.
So we had one of the challenges that we have are very few licensed tour operators with tenure in our area. So we've had, you know, we've assisted tour operators with attaining tenure. And it's a long and involved process involving, you know, public lands and First Nations consultations. So, you know, anybody who's looking to do a tour in the Ancient Cedar Forest or anywhere around has to jump through a fair number of legal hoops and land use regulations. So we had one tour company do that. And then unfortunately, they were forced to shut down when a sawmill opened up right next to their campsite. So that was a little bit of a challenge there as we're trying to balance industry with tourism development. Another challenge that we faced again through snowmobiling and trying to offer snowmobile tours, and we worked with a snowmobile tour operator, again with tenure and again with insurance, and trying to balance, you know, the costs of those things with making enough money to actually make it work. So that was a challenge for them. We've looked at becoming the organizer for some of these tours. Now, in order for us to organize a tour, we have to be heavily insured and bonded with a bond in the bank. So it does cost a fair amount of money to be the organizer, you know, to start as the organizer, and eventually that gets paid back through fees. However, it's a significant capital outlay. I noticed that the tours that you have demonstrated, those were done by BC Ferries, which has huge resources, and by private tour companies. Again, they have the resources and they've managed to maintain a strong business model. And we work with Sundog Tours out of Jasper in that same bailiwick. You know, they offer tours to our area, but they're a long established tour company and really quite profitable. So what do you have for us who we don't have the resources to, the human resources to offer some of these tours? Although I have to say big kudos to Alan Frederick and Rick Thompson for their pedicab tours. Those are just absolutely fantastic and definitely something that could be built on. But again, how do we overcome those cost and tenure and regulatory challenges in order to start something up?
Thank you for the question, Danielle. And where we've seen success in communities is to have a short game and a long game. And we know that's some of the, you've identified some important things around insurance and tenure. And we know some of these things take years to roll out and to solve. And but what we don't want to do is sort of stall the enthusiasm in the short term. So what I would suggest is to look at those experiences that are closest to being market ready, that are easy. Keep it simple to start, and get a group together and collaborate and get something in the ground in the short term. That'll act as a pilot. And then in the background, you can work on some of these longer term, long end game things that that might take years to develop. You'll have the enthusiasm because you'll have a pilot, a simple pilot that is done in a way that is successful, is simple, is executable, and that people feel good about, and it has some uptake. So
what would you suggest?
I think a lot of, I mean, some of the things identified in the presentation in terms of some of the travel through time, I think that you could do it without, you could do a fair amount of the chunks of it without having to do all of it, like the end game. If there's problems with tenure on certain aspects of it, you could certainly program around that in the short term. So if there's some big barriers, if you can't get into attraction A, B, or C, and you think that it's going to extend things, years into the future, bite off parts of it that you can control, and begin that programming piece around those. So I think we had April next.
Hi, thanks so much, and hello everybody. I really enjoyed the presentation, and it's a great starting point for conversation. Over the years, I've worn the travel trade hat for Northern BC Tourism. So, and again, I have just donned the hat again for the next while. And so we are always speaking with tour operators looking for product, but and are really sensitive to the issues that Danielle just raised regarding tenure, etc. But I do appreciate your advice as to biting off pieces that are doable. I think that there are visitors who are looking for ticketable experiences that may not be may not include 2 or 3 days, but they are traveling through based on the other receptive tour operators packages, and they're looking for experiences, ways to experience the immediate area, not necessarily purchasing a large package and in a particular niche experience. So building product around telling your story, providing an experience that rounds out their trip through your community, and so that they can become more familiar and understand your local features would certainly be a good first step. So just small first, and then but a ticketable product so that we can start raising the awareness of that product with our tour operators.
Thank you, April. And Karen, I see you put something in the chat there. Would you like to speak to that?
Sure. Well, I think that we, because McBride itself is a lot to offer, I think, and that wouldn't involve having to look at tenure. So in the summer in particular, when we have summer students working at both the visitor center and at the museum, I think there's an opportunity for those students to do walking tours. They can be self-guided, or they could be, guided by those young people potentially. And I think the train station itself is such a huge draw for people who are visiting McBride, and then Main Street as well, just its look and feel, as well as the unique shops that we have available. So I can see a package kind of coming together there fairly simply, at least in the summer, in the height of tourist season. As far as the ancient forest and people having guided tours, I can see there's opportunity for us to work with the Clay Tenay on developing packages or something along those lines for folks who want to visit the ancient forest. Now, that may not be right away, but I can see that happening in the next year or two.
Thank you, Karen. Any other comments on this before really you've got into the questions that I actually have for you around do you think the package concept proposed could work in the region? We'll just let you in on all of them. Do you have any other ideas, which we're getting into? Barriers and opportunity, which Danielle just kicked it right off and started talking about. And then the last one's going to be around how, who would be involved and how could we kind of bring this to the forefront in a reasonable time frame. So any other comments on either the package concept proposed or some other ideas for packages that could be developed? And we were talking about package. Sometimes it's just as easy to start from scratch and build a new experience with somebody that has an excellent idea. If you've identified a local resource, somebody is passionate about a certain visitor offering, sometimes it's easier. We see that with events too, where sometimes communities want to make a community event a tourism event, and it actually is harder to do than starting a new event altogether. So any more comments on the proposed concept? Longer term, do you think the travel through time could work? And then other ideas.
I think Sheila's comments in the chat box are definitely worth exploring, and we've done part of that already with the ancient cedar forest and then the art in the park piece, and trying to get people to do that. And that's a one-off because it takes it was a wonderful event and has been in the past, and I'm looking forward to it being so in the future. But the amount of organization it took from volunteers in order to make that happen was fairly significant. And it's not something that can be done on a weekly or a monthly basis. So yeah, it was a wonderful piece, and that's something that could be built on for sure.
Yeah, could I add?
Yes, please, Sheila.
We had two very, very successful festivals at the Ancient Forest in 2018 and 2019, and it was stopped with COVID, of course. But the problem with doing tours in the Ancient Forest, especially something that involves as much organizing as arts in the forest kind of event, is the unpredictability of weather at the Ancient Forest, and taking art work into a forest and then having it poured on does not work. So the Arts Council was looking at an alternative when we have a little more stable weather, usually, and perhaps right in the Robson Valley, and calling it Arts in the Garden, very similar to what we did in the Ancient Forest, but with a focus on our agricultural areas. Gardening is a great passion in the Robson Valley, and there are some really spectacular gardens, and largely we don't get to see them even as locals. So we think it has potential.
Good, thank you, Sheila. Brian, did you have a comment there?
Yeah, I have a comment. The packaging is a really nice concept, but to me, you have to have a theme. People stop at the Ancient Forest, people stop at Mount Robson Park and go hiking, and they drive through McBride. So to me, we can start with, what is McBride? What is McBride's theme? Like you talked about a frontier town. So maybe we have to expand the issue of the frontier town, because we have to bring people in to make these other tour type options work. In Jasper, though, there's no problem. People come and there's all sorts of tour operators there and stuff, but why do they come to Jasper? Why do they come to Mount Robson? Why don't they come to McBride? So what do we have here just for people to come? Once you get people to come, then you can start offering these tours and stuff, because it won't work unless we have something for them to come. So the frontier town's perfect. The history of McBride is fantastic. and develop that and get people coming.
Thank you, Brian. I think that, links to some of the comments from others around, starting with experiences that you can control, that are within your community, whether it be walking tour or other activities out of the train station. And that really has no sort of ends to it either. I mean, you could do tons of interpretation, not only of McBride, but also of the region as a whole within your community. And starting with what you can control and the facilities you can control and the message you can control, and really describing what's unique and valuable about your community could be a really good place to start. Now, is there any interest, or has there, I think somebody mentioned Sundog Tours. I think they're out of Jasper. Of course, there's a huge market of people in Jasper. Has there been any sort of overtures, partnerships with organizations, whether they be businesses or governments from other jurisdictions, to kind of work on some of this? Is there any sort of appetite for that?
This is Danielle again. If I may, we've spoken with Paul. He's the owner operator of Sundog Tours on numerous occasions for ways to enhance visitor experience through partnerships around town. We get up to the point where, oh, it's a great idea and here's some options, but then it never just seems to go further than that, and I'm not entirely sure why. And part of it, I think, is your earlier comments on capacity. And I appreciate, and I've given bus tours, walking tours of the town when they have time, personally, when I can, and those are very well received, especially outdoor farm equipment. We get a lot of farmers come in, and it's fun for us and it's fun for the visitors as well. However, those are all hit and miss, and it depends on whether we have sufficient staff in order to make that happen, or the bus tours that come in, if they have, or tour groups that come in, if they have enough time to do so. So our challenges are around regular tours, doing it on a regular basis and having it always available, say at 3 o'clock. And that, again, I can't say enough good things about the pedicab tours, because they come in on a regular basis and offer those kinds of tours. Unfortunately, it doesn't work with larger groups, but for families and small groups traveling together, it's just fantastic. And they do an excellent job. I've heard nothing but good things from our visitors around the tours that are offered by the.
Danielle, can you describe, can you just describe the pedicab tours for me?
Okay, so you know what a pedicab is?
Yes.
Okay, so we have two bicyclists, Alan Frederick and Rick Thompson, and they are entertainers in their own right. They always have something funny and interesting to say, and they have a couple of routes that they go through town. They have them mapped out, where they show various, buildings and outdoor and attractions, and give a lovely little spiel. And I think there's, and Ellen, if he's on here, can correct me on this one, but I'm pretty sure that there's 3 tours that they do of various lengths and with a different fee that visitors can choose from. And they give a wonderful pattern spiel for the whole town.
Right, good. Thank you. Karen, you have your hand up?
I know we're going to talk about challenges in one of your later questions, but further to Danielle's points, I think she's got some really good points about capacity, and timing and all this stuff, because we do see tours coming into town. We do see people coming off the highway. I think what happens in McBride is people actually stumble across McBride and they have an amazing experience, but it's not a planned experience. And right. The pedicabs happen to be at the train station when they pull in, they get a pedicab ride, or they happen into the museum or into the library looking for free Wi-Fi. Then there's the museum open. They walk into the museum and they're introduced to, an amazing history of the community and a pamphlet that guides them on a self-guided tour. They then are into the train station and talk to Danielle and her staff, and then get a whole other, experience about the history, and maybe they go look at the model train. So I think there's a lot of things that are actually happening that are amazing, that create a value added for visitors, but they're not coordinated. And so it's kind of, how do we do that? Who can do that? And then how do we capture the people as they come in, either formally or informally?
Right. Yes, thank you, Karen. I mean, what you're all saying really aligns with what my experience was when I visited your community. And so we just, my family and I would just landed on McBride. We didn't tell anyone we were coming. We like to kind of do that secret shop sort of thing. And it was the tail end of August. It was on a weekend though. Friday night we came in, Saturday. But it was COVID. So, but there was a lot that wasn't open. We were trying to experience as much as we could, but those experiences, like that consistency that you're talking about, not being there, the capacity was certainly aligns with what I experienced when I was there, in terms of some frustration with some things not being open or not on a Saturday, and those experiences not being readily available. So it's really about pushing past some of these, like how is the community going to get through this capacity issue and get some more consistent programming going? I would say is the biggest challenge here. Any other comments on opportunities and challenges? We've got just 10 minutes or so left in the session. And I do want to kind of get to that how here, like, and discuss some of the implementation of this. So, I mean, you folks have been around this a long time in the community. How can we move from where we're at now to a place where there's a group together that are taking these initial steps on building on some of the experiences that you have on that first step? Any comments or questions or solutions on any of this?
I think this is Karen. I think this might be some work that the tourism committee could look at in terms of maybe fleshing out some of these ideas. And then, maybe there's some grant funding available for program development or for hiring, a summer student or something to manage some of these things. So it's about kind of looking at some realistic package options and then discussing capacity. How do we manage them?
And I have to say, from being involved in several package development opportunities and trials, it really is a bit of a lift, Karen, with some of these things. And again, I'm not at all trying to be negative about this. It is exciting, and we really look forward to anything that we're able to offer as a value added piece, anything value added. But you're right, we don't have the capacity at this time in order to develop a full-fledged package program, even the walkabout towns, even the various things. So what we do at the visitor center is we work on self-directed activities and really are enthusiastic about sharing and encouraging people to explore a little bit further and do what they can in McBride. Now, that being said, we are seeing more people come to McBride, and further to your point, Brian, as a destination, seriously as a destination. We've been working on this for 10 years, trying to turn McBride into a destination, and it is coming about. People are coming here on purpose. And if you hear the excitement in my voice, it is. I jump, when I hear somebody say, oh yeah, we plan to come here and we're spending 3 or 4 days here and we're going to explore this and this and this. And it's usually backcountry and outdoor adventure exploring, or they're using this as a base quite often and increasingly so. People are using this as a jumping off point to go explore Jasper. It's too expensive to stay there, but they can certainly make a day trip, or Mount Robson and the ancient cedar forest as well. So they'll spend 3 or 4 days and spend a lot of time touring the area, and then we send them up the door and up the McBride mountain trails as well, and they have a fantastic experience, and then they usually come again and they bring more people. So again, so that's what we do here for free. If there was any kind of help that we could have, again, with staff and finding those funding opportunities to do more, absolutely we would.
Okay, thank you. Other comments on that?
Yeah, I think it's Karen again. I think the reality for tourism in McBride, and again, this feeds into what Danielle is saying, is that people to make their own fun. In other words, there's lots of things to do in and around McBride: horseback riding, backcountry skiing, Yellowwood ski clubs, ski trails, and so on and so forth. But people have to come, you know, to be self-reliant. They have to come with the appropriate vehicle if they want to access the backcountry or the recreational opportunities. So people, yeah, you kind of attract a different kind of person than you might in Jasper, where things are sort of, you just sign up for a tour, it's all handed to you.
Right.
And what we tend to attract are the authentic experiencers and the fully independent travelers. And they come here over and over again and they love it here. And I've heard over and over again from visitors saying, this is what we expected Jasper to be. Not that crowded,
right,
crowded place filled with tourist traps and knickknacks. So again, building on that authenticity is incredibly important. And the only way we can market ourselves as an authentic community is to be an authentic community.
Right. So it's, yes, Eileen.
Oh, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt what she was doing. I was just asking for next. So I'll finish with Danielle's comments first.
Oh,
Danielle, did you? Okay. Go ahead, Eileen. Thank you.
I was just going to say, we kind of have packages ready to happen in a way, just they're just evolving. But if like, for instance, with the ski club and the sled club, if the sled club could market when they go to their markets that they go to their trade shows, if they could market the community, but also market what people in their families can do. So bring the families too. A lot of those people that come sledding in the summer come back in the winter because they really, if the families are enthused, because there's one, the quadding, if they're sledding, there's usually quadders as well, and two, the trails. So I think we could work a lot more among the different organizations to create a package that we could put into a brochure. Certainly extending the seasons past just the winter is very, very important. And we do have the resources to do that, but we seem to be known for just the winter activity. But I think that's where to start. We can start drawing them in.
Thank you, Eileen. Now, the master plan described a bit of a structure around some of this, and I think it plays into a lot of what you're talking about. You know, there is the tourism committee that is overseeing kind of the implementation of the plan. You could certainly have a subcommittee, and I would suggest maybe an ad hoc committee with a kind of a start and end date to it, and with a goal to get at least one experience in the ground by X date. So that kind of suggests like more of an action, like an action oriented pilot, like short term, let's get this done, dissipate and start another one. So we've seen that succeed organizationally in other communities where you do ad hoc committees. You would probably need some grant funding to support that because administratively, as you've identified, capacity is an issue. And if you can get some administrative help through grant funding to develop the business case, develop the marketing around this, and put all the pieces together, that long list of logistical considerations that was in the presentation, you know, those things take time to do. So if you could have some admin resources supported through grant funding, I would also encourage you to look at outside resources. Like even going through the master plan process, all the engagement that we had there, we heard about Sundog Tours, about others coming in and do see some market opportunity, but it's unclear why that doesn't manifest itself in terms of experiences. So I think there's an opportunity for that ad hoc committee to really reach out so you're not using all internal resources. So those are just a few thoughts on how this thing might get some traction along with that whole idea of starting small. Any other comments before we sign off here? So we're right on target for our next session, which is a presentation from Destination British Columbia. and they're going to be describing the MRDT program, and then also some of the services that DBC provides. So if there's no further comments, I would certainly thank you for your attention today, and also to some of the feedback that you provided through the questions and some of the ideas you brought forward. Thank you very much.